Our first guest is a celebrated playwright and a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and for her latest acclaimed production, she's using her own life as a canvas.
Here to discuss her solo show, Forever, now showing at the New York Theater Workshop, is Dael Orlandersmith. Welcome to Arise.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Right.
We've got to talk about this. The reviews have been absolutely stellar.
Yeah.
The Village Voice called it raw, unflinching, and authentic, and the New York Times called it an elegy with a knife-sharp edge. What do you make of those raves, and do you read reviews?
I do, but I don't. I mean, I have to because it's part of the business, and I have to see, you know, what's going to happen with the piece. Am I going to travel with it? You know, in terms of business, yeah. But like I was saying, I still have to do the work, even if it's not celebrated, because I've written things where people have not taken to it, and so it's just a matter of invading my own privacy each time.
How do you insulate yourself from the criticism?
I don't that easily. That's part of it. You know, some people say that they can do their work and not be affected by criticism. I tend not to believe them fully. I mean, so it's a matter of knowing that I still have to do it, even if it's celebrated or no. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about the play and the inspiration behind it?
There's a great documentary. If you guys ever get a chance to see this, called Forever, and I got permission from the filmmaker to do this. It's about Père Lachaise Cemetery. And in Père Lachaise Cemetery, Paris is one of my favorite cities. And anytime I'm in Paris, I visit Père Lachaise. And it's a communion of just artists and just regular folk. And there was someone in that documentary I wanted to play. The director, Neil Keller, said, "Who introduced you to art?" And Dale, being so self-congratulatory, said, "Myself." And I said, "You know what? No, it was my mom." And because in our house there was James Baldwin, there was Dickens, there was Ravel's Bolero. And the Harlem that I grew up in, because I'm 55, so it's a totally different Harlem, right? I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. So for her to have that there was off the chain, you know? So that's actually who unconsciously introduced me to art. And one place she always wanted to go was Paris. So the play starts and ends at Jim Morrison's grave. Richard Wright is also buried there, and Chopin, and Proust, and yeah. So it's a celebration of artists.
The culture's most influential people
No,
buried in one cemetery.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah.
And you speak a lot about your mother in this play, too, and the abuse that you had to go through with her. Can you explain some of that and how that influenced not only, you know, your life, but this play?
It's important, you know, for one thing, because I always say that, you know, a memoir is just that. It's a mixture of fact and fiction. And yes, a lot of those things, there was quote-unquote abuse. There's no, you know. But but when you mix fact, fiction, and theater, you come up with a theatrical truth. And having said that, it was important for the daughter, and I'm speaking as a character, for us to see her flaws, and we also had to understand the mother. We don't have to like her, but, you know, not to understand. I didn't want to turn this into a mommy dearest, because that's not where it's at. And I also want other actors to do this at some point, if it does well. But it's being able to see this as a theatrical piece, and also being able to flesh these people as people. You know, like if you look at, say, someone like Hitler, right? I mean, it's easy to make him into a caricature. But if you look at his background, again, this does not justify the killing of 6 million or more people, but you also look at the fact that he was an abused person himself. So you have to humanize. We don't have to like him, but we have to understand him. We have to understand people.
What's it feel like to mine your own life for your work? How do you go about looking at the facts of your life and then turning that into an artistic expression?
When you were asking about my mother, right? There were a lot of things I did not know. I mean, I'd come across certain things I did not know. And it's like, why don't I know this? And that's when I had to really do the investigative stuff and figure out, this is a person who hid this why? Because there was shame. So I had to really use what I didn't know and what I did know and combine both those things. Obviously, there was shame. You know, she also had a huge drinking problem. So when someone drinks like that, they're masking stuff. So just look, So I really had to do a lot of subtextual work, I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
And I've heard you say before that you don't do the pretty stuff. And this is far from pretty. I mean, some of the stuff is horrifying for people to sit in the audience and hear you talk about being raped as a teenager. How do you muster up the strength and courage to do this night after night to relive these incidents that happen in your life?
And like I said early on, you know, again, it's not easy, but also it's still a form of theater. Because what's happened is there's the one-person genre to a certain degree has become a confessional. I don't want this to become a confessional. I think it's an interesting story. It happens to be based on my life, but it's an interesting story in and of itself. And everybody in this room and, you know, watching has an interesting story, but doesn't mean it's a theater. Beginning, middle, end story, conflict resolution, imagination, language, all that stuff. That's really what's important. I'm an actor. I'm a trained actor, so I can do that. I can, you know, because even if something is, when certain people write things, right? Even if it's not verbatim, if it's not from their lives verbatim, it gives you an insight as to how they think.
Yeah.
But do you have to make sure you don't focus on this did not happen to me, I'm acting, I'm doing a part in order to be able to make it through it, or do you like to personalize it to make it more emotional?
I have a distance from it, a healthy distance, a healthy sense of boundary from it to do the work, yeah.
How, though? Because I would imagine...
I meditate.
You meditate, okay.
Yeah. Yoga.
How do you get...
Red wine.
That always helps.
But is it cathartic for you as well, though?
You know, they've got therapists for that stuff, you know, because really, it's because, like I'm saying, it's like at one point, say, within the early 2000s, a lot of people were writing their quote-unquote life story because there were, like, a lot of unemployed actors. But I'm also a playwright. I mean, I'm best known for a play called Yellow Man.
Yeah.
And so there's that. It's not just about a vehicle for me to act in. It's like I'm literally thinking as a writer as well.
Now, is your mother still alive now?
No, she's not. She's been dead. May 18th will be, 1989 will be 26 years.
What do you think she would say to you doing this type of performance now?
She would have I'm sure she would have a totally different take on what this is.
What do you think it would be
if
you had to put yourself in her shoes?
I think she'd be embarrassed. I think there'd be some pride, confusion, anger.
What do you think she would make of the woman that you've become?
She'd say I did it, and she did to a certain degree. But I think she would be proud, yeah. Yeah.
All right. So what's next for you? I know it's not going to be pretty, but what's next?
There's a piece, there's a one-hander that I wrote for someone else. It's called Lady in Denmark, and what it is, it's for my friend, I hope Kathy Chalfant can do it. I'm looking for a Danish-American actress. It's for the Goodman Theater in Chicago, and it's Billie Holiday's first tour of Europe was in 1954, and one of the places she went to Copenhagen. And this is written both in English and in Danish. I don't speak any Danish, but something would come to me, then I would look it up, you know, on Wikipedia. And Billie Holiday went to Copenhagen, and she was with a doctor and his daughter, and they said, "Come live with us." This is in Lady Sings the Blues. This is and she talked about how the way they wanted her to live with them. They said, "Listen, you are not a thug. You are an addict. Let us help you." And what I did was, the daughter was 12 years old at the time. I brought her up to current age, and my head just started going. I said, what would the influence of Billie Holiday's music over her life, and that's what it is. So it's called Lady in Denmark. How this one encounter with Billie Holiday and how the love of her music, how it influenced her throughout her life. This Danish woman.
Wow. All right.
Powerful stuff.
Can't wait to see that one.
I hope it gets done, yeah.
Oh, it will get done.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, make sure you check out Forever playing at the New York Theater Workshop until May 31st. We'll be right back.